My friend Audrina, Part 2, Solving Dilemmas. Along with Aunt Elizabeth, I didn't know what to say. She sat on and on at the kitchen table, staring into space. Quietly, I cleared the table and filled the dishwasher. Then I lifted Sylvia out of her high chair, washed her face again, and took her upstairs with me while I dressed for school. I tore off my robe, realizing I might be late for the school bus, and searched my drawers for the sweaters I wore each Saturday. Only my old and too small sweaters were in the drawers. Every good cashmere was gone. All the pretty blouses, too, the ones Papa brought home for me from time to time, all gone. Vera must have taken my best clothes that fit her. I ran to the chest of drawers to see what else might be missing. She didn't want my underwear. All of that was there. But when I opened the jewelry case that had once been Mama's, everything of real value left to me by my mother was gone. Even the cufflinks and tie clasp meant for my future husband gone. I cried when I discovered my mother's engagement ring and wedding band had been stolen too. How ugly and hateful to rob me of things I treasured so much. All the fine jewelry Mama had inherited from her ancestors had no doubt been hawked in a pawn shop somewhere. The only thing left of any value was the tiny birthstone ring I always wore on the chain around my neck, and the quartz rose that Arden had given me. It's a wonder she hadn't tried to take those off while I slept. When I returned to the kitchen with Sylvia in my arms, I found my aunt still sitting at the table. Vera took all my good sweaters and blouses and the jewelry Mama left me. She took what jewelry I had too, said my aunt in a flat voice, and my best coat. I also bought that coat last winter. The first new coat I've had in 5 years, and Lord knows when I'll have another. Papa buy you another, but I wasn't so sure that he would. All day long, while I tried to concentrate on what the teacher said, I kept thinking of Vera and how she'd slipped away in the night like a thief, not caring whom she hurt. As soon as the school bell rang at the end of the last session, I was out the door and running to plead a ride with a friendly girl I knew. The little cottage where I'd studied music for 3 years looked deserted. I stood on the front porch and pounded on the door as the wind chime behind me whistled and tore at my hair. "Hey, you kid," called the lady next door. "Won't do you no good to keep hitting the door like that. He's gone. Heard him drive off in the middle of the night. Took some woman with him." "Thank you," I said, turning away and not knowing what to do now. Arden would be home from his school by this time of preparing to deliver his papers, but I didn't have a dime to call him and tell him where I was. I hadn't asked my aunt for change when I left home, since her purse had been emptied by Vera. With my stomach growling, I began the long 15-mile trek to my home. It began to rain long before I reached home. The wind whipped the trees along the roadside and tore at my wet hair, and soon I was so cold, despite my heavy coat, and I began to sneeze. Men slowed their cars and offered me rides. I felt wild with panic as I pretended not to hear them. I speeded my steps. Then a car pulled to a stop, and a man got out as if to catch me and drag me into the car. Wild with terror, I screamed as I raced on. It was like a rocking chair nightmare. A hand grabbed my arm and spun me about. Screaming still, I struck out at him. Then he had my other arm, and I was captured even as I continued to kick and struggle. "What the devil's wrong with you, Audrina?" It was Arden who had me. His ember eyes came closer as he pulled me into his arms. "You're all right. It's only me. Why are you trembling? You shouldn't be out here on the highway. You know that. Why didn't you call?" My teeth chattered so that I couldn't speak. What was wrong with me? It was only Arden. Why did I feel like I wanted to slap him? Shaking his head in puzzlement, he led me to his car. I huddled on the front seat, cringing to the far side, not wanting to be near him. He turned up the heat so high that soon he said he felt he was cooking, but I was still having chills. "You're going to be sick," he said. "You're already feverish looking. Audrina, why did you go to the village?" "I heard in the village that Mr. Ringsdale left last night for New York." He did. And then I told him about Vera. I think she's the woman he took with him. Papa's going to throw a fit. He knows she's run away, but he doesn't guess she ran away with the music teacher. I shivered and felt all the goosebumps in my arms under the coat. "Take care," said Arden as he let me out. Swiftly he leaned to brush a kiss over my cheek. That kiss made me want to scream again. "Don't you go worrying about Vera. She knows how to look out for herself." I was sick in bed with a terrible cold that gave me 4 days to think about nothing much but Vera and Lamar Rinsdale. "Do you think he'll marry her?" I whispered to my aunt one night soon after dinner. "No, men don't marry girls like Vera." The new year started, and though Vera was gone from our lives now, she was far from forgotten. "Damien," began my aunt one morning, "why don't you ask about Vera? Do you miss her? Do you worry about where she is and what's happening to her? She's only 16. Don't you feel any concern for her?" "All right," said Papa. "I don't want to ask about Vera because I don't want you to tell me something I might not want to hear. I don't miss her. This house is a much nicer place to come home to now that she's gone. Nor do I worry about her or feel concerned for her. She's given me just cause to despise her. If she did what I think she did, what I have a very good reason for believing she did, I could take her neck and gladly wring it. But you protected her even then, and tried to convince me she couldn't have been that cruel. I was a fool to have let you protect her. Now pass the butter. I think we'll have another English muffin and another cup of coffee. I wanted to ask what Vera might have done that made him want to wring her neck, but already I'd learned that neither he nor my aunt ever answered questions except by asking me questions about what I remembered. I couldn't remember Vera when she was younger than 10 or 12, or whatever age she'd been when the memory began again. No doubt she's run off with that good-for-nothing piano player, said Papa. Rumors are all over the village, speculating on the woman who left with him in the middle of the night. Audrina, I know you know what can happen when you fool around with boys, and if you never believe another word I say, believe this, you'd better not try the same trick. I'd follow you to the ends of the earth to bring you back where you belong. In some ways, life was much better without Vera in the house. Still, I wondered how Vera was faring with the man who hadn't wanted her. Every day I asked my aunt, have you heard from Vera? Every day she told me the same thing. No, I don't expect to hear from her. I made the worst mistake of my life the day I came back here. But now that I've made my bed, I'm going to make the most of it. That's the winning attitude in life, Audrina. Remember that. Once you decide what you want, stick with it until you have it. What is it you want? She didn't answer, just plodded about the kitchen in floppy shoes that made slip-slop sounds, shoes that she took off before Papa came home. An hour before he was due, she raced upstairs, bathed, dressed, arranged her hair, which she'd had trimmed so it hung loose sometimes. She looked years younger, mostly because she found a smile to wear. Without Vera, our lives took on a certain sameness, an unexciting routine that was comforting. I turned 13, then 14. Sylvia grew but did not progress. She took up all my spare time, but still I saw Arden every day. Papa had resigned himself to Arden, confident I'd see so much of him that I'd soon be bored with the sameness. I was full of sadness when Arden told me the next fall he'd be going away to college. I didn't want to think of life without Arden. Oh, Audrina, cried Arden, suddenly picking me up. Sometimes when I look at you, I say how lovely you've become, and it makes my heart hurt. I'm so afraid while I'm gone, you're going to find someone else. Audrina, please don't fall in love with somebody else. Save yourself for me. Somehow or the other, my arms had gone around his neck, and I was clinging to him. I wake up in the night, he went on, thinking of how you'll look when you're fully grown, and I think as your father does then, that you'll feel toward me like a brother. That's not what I want. I've heard my mom say she changed her mind about boyfriends 3 times a week when she was your age. Suddenly I was very conscious of being in his arms, and I squirmed until my toes were on the ground. I'm not your mother. How serious I felt, how adult, how wise, when I wasn't wise or adult. Something soft and wonderful happened in his eyes, making his pupils enlarge and grow darker. The light that grew in them told me even more his head inclined that at the tender age of 14 I was going to be kissed by the only boy I'd allowed into my life. How tender his lips were on mine, so tentative and light I felt shivers both hot and cold race up and down my spine. Joy and fear combined as I tried to decide if I liked the kiss or not. Why should I fear? Then he kissed me again, a bit more passionate, and I was filled with apprehension as the rainy day in the woods came back to haunt me. It belonged to the first Audrina, that awful day. Why was it tormenting me and punishing Arden? Why are you trembling? Arden asked. I'm sorry, I just couldn't help but be a little alarmed. I've never been kissed like that before. I'm sorry if I shocked you, but I just couldn't help myself. A million times I've held back. This time I couldn't. Then I was sorry. Oh, Arden, isn't it silly of me to be scared when I wondered what was taking you so long? Why had I said that? It sounded like something Vera would say. Are you going to be a pushover? My mother was like that. I was hoping you'd be different, and that would prove to me that you have what we have now might last forever. Because maybe Mom hasn't told you, but she's been married more than once. She was only 17 the first time, and it was only for a few months. My father was her third husband, and so she claims her best. Sometimes I think she says that just to make me feel good about him. 3 times. I'm no pushover, I said quickly. It's just that I love you. Puppy love, Aunt Elizabeth tells me. I never tell her anything. She just looks at me and says it's more than just being outside so much that makes my eyes shine and my skin glow. Even Papa says I never looked healthier or happier. But I think it's you, and I think it's because I've learned to love Sylvia so much, and she loves me too, Arden. When I'm not around, she crouches in a dim corner as if she doesn't want anyone to notice her. I think she's terrified of Aunt Elizabeth. Then when I come into the room, she comes over to me and she tugs on my hand, or on the hem of my skirt. Her small face tilts backward, and she makes me the center of her life. He looked uncomfortable, refusing to turn and look at Sylvia, who was always with me. If not in sight, some were close by. Not too far away, Sylvia crawled on the ground, following a long string of ants at a hole in the ground. Stop looking at Sylvia, looking at the ants, he teased. Look at me. Playful, he slapped at me when I refused to look at him. I shoved him away, and he shoved back, and we both fell on the ground and wrestled around before his arms encircled me. "I do love you," he whispered hoarsely. "I know I'm too young to feel this way, but all my life I've been hoping it would be like this, while I'm young, with the kind of girl you are, special, clean, and decent." My heart began its nervous throbbing as his amber eyes traveled slowly downward from my face to my neck, my bosom, and my waist. Then he was looking to a lower place that made me blush. Staring into my eyes and even looking at my breast had made me feel beloved and beautiful, but to look there sent shivers of recognition darting through my memory, stirring up the nightmares of the rocking chair and all that had been done to the first Audrina who had died because all three of those boys had looked there, despite her frantic efforts to cook them away. Shame filled me. Quickly I moved my leg to concealing position. What I did made Arden blush. "Don't be ashamed of being a girl, Audrina." All of a sudden I began to cry. She's made me ashamed. All my life I've been tortured because of her. I hated her. I wish she'd never been born, and then maybe I'd feel right and natural instead of wrong and unnatural. Still I kept on shivering, even more violently. What feet were walking on my grave? Hers? "I'm going home now," I said stiffly. "You're angry with me." "No, I'm not. It's half an hour before twilight, plenty of time before dark. I'll make up for it tomorrow." I ran for Sylvia and seized her small hand, pulling her to her feet. "Just stand where you are and don't walk to the edge of the woods. If anything bad happens, I'll call for you. I need to do this, Arden." The sun was in his eyes, preventing me from reading his expression. "Call out when you reach your lawn to let me know you're all right. Arden, even if sometimes I act strange and I pull away and tremble, don't pull away from me. Without you, I wouldn't know how to get through the woods or the days." Embarrassed, I whirled around and tried to run, but Sylvia didn't know how to run. She stumbled on tree roots, tripped on sticks, fell over her own feet, and soon I had her in my arms. She was 6 years old now, and getting heavy. The crystal prisms she carried in her pockets everywhere she went made her heavier. Soon I put her down and slowed my hurrying feet. "Home before dark," I kept saying to myself. "Home before it rained." "I'm here, Arden," I called, "safe in our own yard. Go inside and good night. If you dream, dream of me." His voice from the woods sounded very close, making me smile sadly. He'd followed us, as if he knew what had happened to the first Audrina and wanted to save me from her fate. Arden had been in college 1 year when I had my 16th birthday. He made top grades, but it was a dull year for me, lonely in the house, and even lonelier when I ran through the woods, hauling Sylvia with me when I visited Billy. The cottage seemed half empty without Arden, without its heart. I marveled that Billy could stay there alone and still manage to smile. Over and over again she read his letters to me as I read bits and pieces of his letters to her. To me. She'd smile when I skipped some little endearment, for in his letters he dared much more than he did in person. High school pleased me more than grammar school, but the boys there were much more persistent. Sometimes it was hard to concentrate solely on Arden, whom I saw so seldom. I was sure he was dating other girls he never wrote about, but I was faithful, dating no one but him when he came home on school vacations. All the girls were envious that I had a college-age boyfriend. Taking care of Sylvia filled my life, stole every spare moment when I could have been making friends with girls my own age. I didn't have time for any of the social activities he enjoyed. Every day I had to rush home as quickly as possible in case I had to rescue Sylvia from the switch my aunt liked to wield. And out of pure indifference, my aunt made Sylvia suffer unnecessarily, waiting for me to tend to her physical needs. I spent my afternoons with Billy, and in the years Arden was away, Billy taught me to cook, to sew, to can. Every once in a while she attentively tried to teach me just a little about men and what they expected from their wives. A physical relationship is not everything, but it's very important as far as men are concerned. A good sex life makes the best cornerstone for a long and happy marriage. The Christmas after I turned 17, a card arrived from New York, showing the city as I seen from the Hudson River, all pastel and bluish with the snow sprinkled over it. My aunt had grunted at the message inside. It said only, "You'll see me again, never fear," and was signed Vera. It was the first we'd heard from her in 3 years. At least she's alive, and for that I should be grateful. But why did she address the card to Damien and not to me? A week later, I suddenly awakened in the wee hours of the night. Since Sylvia came into my life, I developed some alert sixth sense that made me aware, even when I was asleep at the passage of time, of events going on that needed me there. My first thoughts were of Sylvia when I'd heard the loud voices again. In a flash, I was out of bed and racing to her room, only to find her deeply asleep. A thin line of light came from under my father's bedroom door, and to my utter amazement, my aunt's voice was coming from there. "Damien, I want to go to New York. Yesterday Vera called. She needs me. I'm going to her. I've done all I can for you and for your daughters. You could always hire a maid to cook and clean. And you do have Audrina, don't you? You've managed to tie her hand and foot to Sylvia. It's not fair what you're doing. I know you love her, so let her go to college. Set her free, Damien, before it's too late. Ellie, what would happen to Audrina if she left here? She's too insensitive for the world out there. I'm sure she'll never marry that boy, and he'll find that once he tries something. No man wants a woman who can't respond, and I doubt she'll ever learn how. Of course not. You've done that to her. When she told you the rocking chair gave her those visions, still you made her use it. To give her peace, he said wearily, while I froze in panic. What were they fighting over me? What was my aunt doing in the bedroom at 3 a.m? Now listen to me, Damien, and here's some common sense for a change. You like to pretend that Vera doesn't exist, yet she does. And as long as she's alive, neither you nor Audrina nor Sylvia is safe. If you allow me to go to her, I can talk some sense into her. She's constructing her entire life around you and her revenge. If she comes back, she could destroy Audrina. Let me go, please. Give me enough money to make the trip and tide me over until I find a job. I need to be with Vera, and you do owe me something, don't you? That girl in New York is just as much your flesh and blood as Audrina and Sylvia, and you know it. You said you loved me. It's over and done with, Ellie. There's more to life than regretting the past. Let's get on with the day, the here and the now. Why did you say you loved me when you didn't? She screamed. You had your dreams then, Ellie. You were sweeter then. I had hopes then, Damien, she said bitterly. Ellie, tell me what Vera is threatening to do if she comes back. I'll kill that girl if she does one more thing to hurt Audrina. Oh, God, you made her what she is. Behind every evil thing Vera did was frustration and pain from feeling rejected by her own father. You know what Vera's threatening. When first you and Lucilla told me what you planned to do about Audrina, I thought the two of you were fools. But still I sat back and said nothing, hoping it would work. I gave up trying to please you long ago, for I don't know how to subjugate myself to your whims. It's Audrina I want to save. There was a time when I thought that girl a weakling, but she's proved she's not. I thought she had no spirit, no fight, but I applaud each time she slaps back at you. So sit there and glare those damn black eyes at me. I don't give a damn. But tell Audrina the truth before Vera does. There's a fortune in this house, and part of it could be yours, he said in a cajoling voice, but none of it will be yours if you or your daughter say one word to Audrina. How could you go anywhere without money, Ellie? Who would want you but me? You don't want me, she yelled. She yelled with so much anger I fell upon my knees and put my eye on the keyhole, just as Vera used to do so many years ago when Mama fought with him. You use me, Damien, as you use all women. Oh. There was my prim and prissy aunt pacing in Papa's bedroom, dressed in nothing but a flimsy nightgown that once belonged to my mother. She was naked underneath. To my amazement, she looked better without clothes than with them. Her breasts weren't large and full like Mama's had been, but smaller, firmer, and very high. My aunt's nipples were wine-colored and very large. How old was she, anyway? For the life of me, I couldn't remember my mother telling me her age, and she'd been vain enough not to want her birthday carved on her tombstone. Many times I heard her tell Papa not to let the newspapers publish her age. It wasn't the first time I'd realized that no one's birthday was nearly as important as mine. My aunt's long dark hair was loose and flowing, fanning out as she spun around. I stared at my aunt, wondering why she hadn't found another man after losing Papa to my mother. As she was now, she seemed very exciting and challenging, especially if I could judge from the way Papa's eyes lit up as he yelled at her and tried to talk her out of going to New York. Suddenly he lunged, grabbing her by the waist and dragging her kicking and fighting into his lap. She struck at him time and again as he laughed and ducked, and then managed to crush his lips down on hers. All the fight went out of her then as her arms hungrily embraced him, and she held his head to hers, moaning as his lips began to explore all the crevices and hills of her body. I watched, shocked, as he kissed her breast while his hand fondled beneath the peignoir. You're wrong, Ellie. I do love you in my own way, just as I love Lucky in a very special way. It's not my fault if I can't keep love after the object of it is dead. I have to go on, don't I? And if you think I love myself more than I love anyone else, then I haven't tried to deceive you, have I? At least respect me for being honest, if you can't respect me for anything else. Now I knew for certainty, with no more guilty speculations, just who the man was my mother had stolen from her half-sister. I also knew definitely my father was also Vera's father. The more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I'd become about my mother. Had she deliberately stolen her older sister's lover? Standing, I left them on the bed. Now my aunt and my father were lovers again. Strangely, after more hours of thought, I wasn't as shocked as once I would have been, or as distressed. Perhaps fate did work in mysterious ways to see that all things worked out equally. It also occurred to me that perhaps the two of them might have been lovers even when my mother was alive, right in this house, under our own roof. Certainly there was enough unused rooms that would have given them the place and opportunity. My memories went flittering back to tea times when Aunt Mercy Marie's photograph was on the piano, and in my head the echoes of all the harsh words exchanged between my mother and her sister resounded. Not once had my aunt showed one indication that she was anything but jealous of my mother. No, I decided Aunt Elizabeth had too much respect for herself and scorn for Papa than to have had an affair with the man who'd rejected her once when Cecily Whiteman was still alive. After I labeled their relationship as Papa's need and my aunt's reward, I put away their secret, determined to never let them know I knew. It was a long time before my aunt ever mentioned Vera again. The Christmas I was 17, Arden put an engagement ring on my finger, then pulled me into his arms. Now you can stop wearing any year with a 9. When you're 19, you'll be my wife, and I'll take care to see that nothing bad ever happens to you. That June, I graduated from high school. I still wore the engagement ring Arden had given me around my neck on the chain that used to suspend my little birthstone ring. I began to notice a steady change in my aunt, who didn't seem as contented as before. I'd never thought of her as happy until I faced her unhappiness. She seldom went anywhere. Other women her age belonged to bridge clubs and attended coffee clutches, but my aunt didn't have a single friend. What clothes she wore at home were old, and the new ones she wore to go out with Papa were chosen by Papa, just as he often selected my best clothes. She didn't have any hobby other than knitting, and she watched those everlasting soap operas. She had me, she had Sylvia, and Papa, and that internal cooking and cleaning, and the reward of having a few hours to sit before a choice of a new color TV set. And I'd never realized that she needed or deserved more. She didn't complain. There was no obvious physical symptoms to make me think she was ill, but something had changed. She often paused in her work to stare into space. She began to read the Bible as if looking for solace. She took long hikes alone, avoiding the woods and sticking to the shores of the river. Sometimes I walked beside her, neither of us speaking much. She'd stop to stare down at the ground with undue interest. She gazed up into the trees and at the sky with the same kind of tense curiosity, as if she'd never taken notice of nature before and was brand new to her. She stared at the squirrels and infested all the impressive old trees. I told her I was sure they'd been here when Columbus set sail from Spain, and my aunt had scuffled and told me I was unduly romantic like my mother. Practicality was my aunt's virtue, yet if she hadn't won Papa, why hadn't she set her sights on another man? In no way would my unrealistic and romantic mother have remained unmarried all her life. But how could I say any of this, when I was just beginning to understand my aunt? And with the understanding came the love that had been lacking in our relationship. I wanted to talk to her, but it was difficult to communicate. And then one day she surprised me. Do you love that young man, Arden? Oh, yes, of course I do. He makes me feel so safe and beautiful, too. He tells me all the time how wonderful I am and how much he loves me. My own words gave me pause. It was like I was letting Arden convince me I had to love him because he loved me. Frowning, my aunt glanced my way briefly, then looked away. I hope you'll always feel that way about him. People change, Audrina. He'll change. You'll change. You'll see each other differently because of new perspectives. You may not love him at 20 as much as you do at 18. You're a beautiful young woman and can pick from the very best the world has to offer. But you have even more, something far better than beauty, but that won't last long. You think it will. Pray that it will, but it goes sooner or later. The more beauty you have, the worse it hurts when it's gone. And one thing your father is right. You are special. No, I'm not. I have no special gifts. My dreams are only ordinary. Oh, that. What difference does it make how you achieve your goals? At least your father leaves you alone now at nights when you no longer scream out. I've always considered him a monster for forcing you into that room when you didn't want to go there. But that's beside the point. Without you, Damien wouldn't have fared so well. So don't let him take credit for all the good fortunes. You motivate him and give him reason for accumulating wealth. To travel life's road alone isn't easy, and no one knows that better than I. Damien could never have survived your mother's death without you. Men are strange creatures, Audrina, remember that. So stand up for your rights and demand a college education. Don't let him talk you out of what you want. He'll try to keep you from marrying, from ever leaving him. Don't let him succeed in chasing Arden away. He couldn't do that, or else Arden would have disappeared a long time ago. I know Papa's tried. Arden's told me he's tried to make him stay away from me. All right, then, but when you see your chance to escape, seize the opportunity and flee. You don't need to live near those woods, and in that house filled with all the unhappy memories. Why, it would even be better if you moved into that cottage with his poor crippled mother. You know about Billy? I didn't think anyone knew. Oh, for heaven's sake, Audrina, everybody knows about Billy Lowe. There was a time when her face was plastered on every magazine cover, and when she lost one leg and then the other, that made the headlines. You were too young at the time to notice. Besides, your father only allowed you to read the financial pages. She paused, as if ready to say more, but seemed to think better of it. Don't you realize your father's been coaching you about the stock market since the day you were born? Audrina, use your knowledge and benefit yourself, not him. What did she mean? I asked, but she refused to explain. Still, I loved her for trying to help me, never suspecting that maybe she was waiting for me to try and help her. Later that night, I decided she was depressed because Papa didn't marry her. Depressed because she hadn't had but one Christmas card and one telephone call from Vera in 5 years. How hateful of Vera to treat her mother as if she never existed. I had to have a talk with Papa soon, very soon. But Papa was seldom home, and when he was, my aunt was there, and I didn't want her to know what was going on. How complicated everything was. Those were almost the first words I said to Arden when he came home for a weekend. My aunt knew all about your mother's condition. He smiled, kissed me 4 or 5 times, held me for a long, long moment so hard I felt every muscle in his strong young body. I felt something else, too, making me draw away and glance downward. That bulging hardness clamored the wind chimes in my head and filled me with frightened panic, so I felt weak and ready to run. He noticed and seemed hurt, then embarrassed so much he held his top coat to cover what betrayed his excitement. Lightly he said, "Well, I did what I could, and she did what she could, and I'm sure you did what you could, but secrets will out, and maybe it's for the best." He went on to speak of our marriage soon after he finished college, and that was only weeks away. Again panic visited and told me I needed more time. We were in the woods again, on the way home, when he embraced me, much more passionately than ever before. Until he grabbed me, I'd heard the little birds overhead. But the moment he touched me, the birds turned off. I froze and became stiff from 1 and 2 intimate caresses. I jerked from his arms and turned my back, clamping my hands over my ears. "It's all right, darling. I understand. You're still very young, and you've got to keep remembering that. I want to make the rest of your life happy. To reimburse you reimburse me for what? For all the things that shadow your eyes. I want my love to erase your fears about everything. I want our child to respond to your care as Sylvia never has. Child? I didn't need another child." Arden seldom spoke Sylvia's name as if he, too, wanted to pretend she didn't exist. "Arden, if you can't love Sylvia, then you can't love me. She's part of the rest of my life. Please realize that now, and tell me if you can accept her, or else let's say goodbye before this goes any further." He glanced to where Sylvia was winding around the tallest tree in the woods. Her slender arm was outstretched, so her fingers could lightly trail over the bark as endlessly as she circled it. I told myself she was trying to communicate with the tree by feeling its skin, and there was some sense in what she did. That's the way she was, always active, never still while she was awake, always doing something that was essentially nothing. Right to the edge of the woods, Arden escorted me and Sylvia. I was feeling right enough by this time to exchange happy plans with him for that evening and the next day. My father and aunt were in the kitchen arguing. The minute they heard me enter the house, their voice stilled, and I heard the unnatural quiet that comes to announce that you've interrupted something private. I hurried up the stairs with Sylvia. Arden returned to college for his last semester, and I settled down to helping Papa turn this house into better than new. Now that Papa was noted for making everything he touched turn to gold, Aunt Elizabeth liked to tell him acidly that soon his head would be too large to come through the double front doors. Literally thumping his nose at her, Papa ordered workmen to tear down walls to make some rooms larger and others smaller. He had bathrooms added to his rooms, to mine, and 2 more as well. He decided he needed 2 large walk-in closets to accommodate his many suits and dozens of pairs of expensive shoes. My own room was enlarged, and a dressing room was added with a private bath. I felt splendidly candid with all those crystal and gold fixtures and electric lights forming my dressing mirror. In the end, it seemed we'd have a home, not equal to, but surprisingly, what it had been. Papa searched until he found all the genuine antiques the White Prince had sold years ago, proving that all that my aunt had thrown in my mother's face about the fakes in her house were true. Even that grand bed Mama had believed was the real thing proved to be just a reproduction.
Hello.
No, he has emerged from his cocoon. Yeah, your cocoon. I listened with incredulity to all he planned to do. He had much miserly ways about petty things and such extravagant ideas when it came to his house and his clothes. To everyone in the financial world, he was the messiah of the stock market. That gave him so much confidence, he began to write a stock advice newsletter in his spare time. He listed the stocks to buy, to short, to sell, and then sold what he told others to buy along the day his newsletter was delivered. He covered his shorts when others went too short. He bought what he told his clients to sell. In a few hours of trading, he'd ended up with thousands of dollars in profits. It seemed unfair, and I told him this, but he replied by saying that all of life was unfair, a battle of wits to survive, Audrina. The victories in life belong to those who move fastest and move cleverly. And it's not cheating. After all, the public should have better sense, shouldn't they? Papa sent this stock advice letter to a friend who lived in San Francisco, and this friend had a publishing business, and all such friends were willing to collaborate in the fraud. Then came that wonderful day when Arden was due home from college, having received his diploma. Papa had seemed so heartless, but as not to allow me to attend his graduation ceremonies. Unknown to Papa, who'd have me always dependent on him, Arden had taught me to drive years ago. Therefore, it was easy to borrow one of Papa's older cars while he was at work, and with Sylvia dressed in her best, I headed to the airport terminal to wait for his plane to land. The moment was at hand. I was foolish enough to think I was ready for anything.